Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison Barnes, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Derik Doepker, who is an author, a trainer, and a coach. And Derik and I met, well, we just recently connected, but I think I have been subscribed to his newsletter for quite a while now. So welcome to the show, Derik. Uh-oh. Derik?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Ann.
Okay, sorry about the internet.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. All right, so, and if we have any technical difficulties, I do apologize for that. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I never thought I'd be a writer. Actually, when I was growing up, I was a guitar player. So I went to school for music, got a degree in music composition, and I thought that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a rock guitarist and become a rock star. So I moved out to LA to pursue that. What ended up happening though is on that journey, I uh, was broke, sleeping on an air mattress, valet parking cars. And so I was looking for a way to share my passion for one of my passions is music, but another passion was health and fitness, as well as just personal development. And I thought, okay, if I can share this with the world and get paid for it, that would be amazing, to get paid to do what you love, paid to help people. And so that's when I got into blogging, into writing, into book publishing. And for a couple of years, didn't go anywhere. I published my first book on Amazon Kindle and sold about 3 copies in that first month. And 1 copy, I'm pretty sure, was to my mom. So did not have success out of the gate with that. But after learning from a mentor, studying a lot about business and marketing, in December of 2012, I published my 3rd book, and it became a #1 bestseller in weight loss and generated almost $6,000 in royalties in 11 days. So I realized at that point I figured this thing out. I had cracked the code. And I was also kind of frustrated though that it took me this much time to figure it out, because I'd been going through courses and books and training programs. I felt like I was doing everything right, and yet nothing had worked. And I realized that there were some things missing that I hadn't been told about how to become a successful writer and author. And so I wanted to start coaching and teaching other authors while also continuing to write books. So I now at this point have 7 books that have become #1 bestsellers, sold over 75,000 copies of my books, and also am working with authors and writers, people who have a passion for writing and for helping people, inspiring people with their message, whether that's fiction or nonfiction, and helping them get their work out in the world to make either a living from it or at least make some nice extra income from selling their books.
And one of those books is Why Authors Fail, which I am going to keep and make notes with later because I'm still trying to become a successful author myself. But you answered one of my questions, is what inspired you to become a writer?
Yeah, a part of it was my first instance of writing actually was not sitting down and writing. It was recording videos. So I shot a bunch of videos with a guy I knew, just sharing what I knew about health and fitness. And then I took that and it basically just started to transcribe it. So I kind of accidentally got into writing, but then I eventually developed a love for the craft of writing itself, and written, I won't say daily emails, but almost daily emails for a number of years. So I imagine it's been uh, thousands of emails that I've written, not to mention however many, probably over 1 million pages in my books since that time. So I've really developed that passion for the craft of writing itself. And at the same time, I work and I coach with different entrepreneurs and people out there who maybe they say to themselves, well, I don't consider myself much of a writer, or, I don't think I'm a strong writer. I actually find that as long as you can communicate your message, I'm often telling them, just record yourself talking to someone, record yourself sharing your information. This is more for nonfiction, but record yourself communicating what you have to say from your heart without that filter. And a lot of times what comes out is perfect. And then I say, great, now just go transcribe that. And they end up creating great writing by going through that process until they eventually train themselves to actually take what's in their head and let it come out through the writing.
Did you actually go back and edit and update that first book?
I don't think I did much with that first book. I mean, it's still out there, but I don't do much to promote it. So my approach was just focusing on making that next book better, making that really doing well with the next book. And I'm not saying this is the approach for everyone. I believe there's a benefit to this idea of just get one done. You know, I work with so many authors, and for instance, one author I work with, her name's Rosina. She's a psychiatrist, and she was working on her first book. She thought she had the draft done. She came to me and my business partner for coaching. We ended up having to rewrite pretty much the whole thing. And it was probably about 6 months to a year into the journey. And she was just like on the verge of tears one day, wanting to quit because it just seemed so tough to get this book done. And all the inner stuff. Who am I to write a book? Do I really have what it takes? Is this even going to help anyone? And we helped her break through that. And once she got her first book done, then she's like, oh, I'm ready to do my next one. And she just, knocks out her next book, which was a journal. And it's sort of like she was unleashed after that. And what happened though, there's a couple things that went into it, but I believe one of the things that happened was once she got a book done and got it out there, she proved to herself that she could do it. And then now publishing book 2, now she's working on book number 3. It's just like they just start rolling out because, again, that proof to yourself. So I say it could be worth just getting a book done, even if you don't share it with anyone, even if it's just like, okay, that's my first book. It's not great. It's not my masterpiece, right? Taking that pressure off and allowing yourself to get something done without any expectation of it being the best quality. And then the next book or the next work can be something that you kind of raise the bar on. So I find that perfectionism tends to stop a lot of would-be first-time authors. And if you give yourself permission to either just make the first draft not that great at all and then improve from there, or make the first book not even that great. And again, I'm not saying put out a poor quality book, but you get it done. And again, you don't have to share it with anyone. You either then improve that, or you've given yourself permission in a sense to say, oh, I can do this. And then you make the next project that you work on all the better.
I know I've worked through another book in a series that I'm working on. And in order to make the 2 books consistent, I have to go back and update the first one. That's a story in itself. That's a horror story. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. And it can be, I mean, it's challenging in the sense of sometimes I see authors and, you live and you learn. So then you look back, you could look back and go, oh, wow, what could I have done differently for that, that first book, and maybe change it. The optimistic good side of that is it's not set in stone. We live in a day and age where you can go back and update it. So it doesn't have to be perfect the first time around. There's always that opportunity to make these updates and make it even better.
Right. Um, so tell me a little bit about your writing process. Do you heavily outline before you write a book, or do you just write you do more brainstorming?
My writing process, it's probably varied for different books, but if I look for a consistent pattern, the early stage is a lot of brain dumping, just getting a lot of ideas out. And I remember for the last book I wrote, which was my longest book, at about 350 pages, I think I had about 40,000 words of just notes. So I had a book written of just notes and ideas, and most of them probably don't make much sense if anyone else were to read them. I don't even know if I could make sense of it, because it's really just this unfiltered stream of consciousness that comes out. And the idea that, and this is a process that works for me, I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone else. It's not necessarily a recommendation. It's just what I do or have done. And that is getting those ideas out. I might not even go back. Like, I did not go back through and read through all of those notes. What it was just the act of thinking through it, writing down ideas. Through that, I was getting a lot of things out there. And then I was able to kind of take a step back and let my intuition guide me and go, okay, of all these things I've been sharing, what is really right for this book? And when you write multiple things, whether that's multiple books, or even if you only write one book, but you have a blog or you have emails that you write or other avenues of expression, then I go, I don't have to fit everything in one book, which is another thing I see some authors do. They think they got to squeeze everything in one book. I go, what is right for this book? What does this book need to have? And I guess that takes me back to a point that then the first thing, or one of the first things to consider when writing a book, is what is the intention of the book? What do you want this book to do for your reader? What do you want this book to do for yourself? And that intention will guide you. It will determine what's included, and just as important, what's not included in the book. And so that's the first sort of phase is, okay, what's the intention, and getting all the ideas out. I think it kind of go back and forth. Sometimes you get a bunch of ideas out and then kind of go, okay, what direction do I want to go in? Or you go, what direction do I want to go in, and kind of dump ideas into that. But that early stage is not about quality in any way, shape, or form. It's not about it being really coherent even. It's just getting the raw materials. Then you start to filter it down and go, okay, once you get all the ingredients out there, what do I actually want to create with these ingredients? So what ingredients do I need? What do I not need? So it's like you're going to the store, you're stocking your kitchen full of ingredients, but then you're deciding what recipe do I want to make. You're not going to need everything in your spice cabinet for probably a particular recipe. You're not going to need everything in your refrigerator. You're going to pick and choose out of the things that you have available what's going to make sense for this particular dish or meal that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, the next phase is then I will start to outline and get a sense of what's the flow for this book, oftentimes starting with the end in mind. So I'm thinking always from a marketing perspective. So one of the first things I'm considering is, what is the title? What is the subtitle? What is even the description before actually writing the book? So I encourage authors, and this is true fiction or nonfiction or children's book or any kind of book, thinking about what is the reader going to see when they hold my book? On the cover, the title, subtitle, the back cover, on the Amazon page, or wherever it's being sold at. And it's not a final decision. I might change the title throughout as I get halfway through the book, or when I'm done with the book, I might read through it and a different title speaks to me. But at least having some sort of container for the material to guide the direction that I go in. So I figure out title, subtitle, at least a working title, subtitle, description. Then I fill in, okay, so what's going to support that? How would I present my book in a way that would be really captivating and make people want to buy it? I think of that first, and then I go, what do I need to include to then fulfill upon those promises that I'm making to the prospective reader? Then I outline, organize it. Then it's kind of a repeat, maybe brain dumping a little bit into each chapter, and then sifting and sorting what I want to keep and what I want to add. I would say I tend to overwrite, meaning write way more than I need, and then take things out. And I find that that's easier for me than to be too sparse and then think, what do I need to add to it? So I'm constantly looking to just cut things out to be more succinct. And my editing process then is something I call craft. So I'm going, if in nonfiction, I'm going, what is this credible? Is this relatable? I actually have to look at what all the different things are, but credible, relatable, is there a formula to it? And so I kind of go through my writing and in the editing process and just make sure that it has that persuasive aspect to the writing. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm sure there's a lot of other details, but that's the general idea. If I have to really summarize it, I'd say get all the things out, unfiltered, then organize an outline. Then when writing without a filter as well. There's no brake pedal. It's just all gas. Just let the stream of consciousness come out. Dump everything in there that I can, and then go back through and cut things out and consider how to make it more impactful.
Sounds like NaNoWriMo's philosophy, the crappy first draft.
Yeah, it's absolutely key. And I'll say this, another part of the writing process, if anyone procrastinates on writing, or feels this sense of perfectionism. I technique that I often share, and I use this for writing, I use this for working out, I use this for cleaning my apartment. So I call it the 3 magic words technique. And 3 magic words are, can I just?
I love
And then
that.
you insert what's called you do what's called a micro commitment. Can I just write one sentence and then I can quit? Can I just open my word processor, write one sentence, and then I can stop? Then I can go surf Facebook, right? And what you might find happen if you're anything like me is you'll get started, but once you write one sentence, it's kind of, well, can I just write? Okay, I'm already started. Can I just write another one? Can I just finish this paragraph? Then I can quit. Finish a paragraph. Well, now you're in momentum, and momentum generates motivation. So you'll often find that once you get started, then you'll want to keep going. So I use this, I mean, with working out, can I just exercise for 30 seconds, then I can quit? Well, yeah, it's so easy. You can't say no to it. And if 30 seconds is too much, can I do 10 seconds? Can I do one push-up, right? You find the smallest level of commitment that you say yes to, and then you build from there. So that's about quantity, like one sentence. But the other thing is, this comes from Tim Ferriss, like um, poor quality pages. Like, they don't have to be good. They can be terrible pages. You don't have to keep them. Can I just write 2 pages no matter how bad they are? And when you do that and you take the pressure off to make it so good or a masterpiece, what ends up happening is you free yourself to just let things come out. And maybe they will be terrible, but within that could be a gem, or at least it gets you started, and then it shapes up over time into something that ends up being something you're really proud of.
Sounds like me. Can I just edit? Can I just edit or rewrite one chapter, and then I'm 3 chapters later, I'm still going.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. That's a really good tip. You guys ought to you guys listening, you definitely want to hang on to this episode, and you're gonna want to get your notebooks because these are some very valuable tips. And talking about scene dumps, you do you find that when you take out the unnecessary stuff that you can use that somewhere else?
Yeah, oftentimes I can, or at least I tell myself that I can, which helps me let go of it. So this idea of kill your darlings, right? The idea
Mhm.
that you got to like sacrifice these things that you might have a love for, but it just doesn't fit in work. And I say, you don't always have to kill your darlings. It could be, give them a different job, right? So maybe it doesn't
Mhm.
show up in this book, but it shows up in an article or an email or a different book or something like that. Now, I find that helps me with it. And many times there are practical ways I can use things I've done somewhere else. And this isn't just what's inside the book. If I'm brainstorming book titles, I've spent recently a couple hours brainstorming a book title and subtitle for a new book. And it's worth it because your title and subtitle can be that important, especially in nonfiction, to spend a couple hours, if not even more, right? I spend
Mhm.
weeks sometimes, not the only thing I do, but brainstorming, coming up with ideas, surveying people, and so on. But I go, okay, well, if I come up with 50 or 100 different title ideas and I'm only using one, that doesn't mean 99 other titles that I don't choose go to waste. That means out of those, there's some good article titles, there's some good talk titles, there's some good email headlines, there's some good material in there that I could use as or a title for a different book or a different project, right? So it's not really going to waste. It's just taking the things that you're not using and giving a different job.
And I like that too because that especially works in fiction too because some of the stuff that you throw away, and I've got a most of a journal full of scenes that I don't. That can be I can go back and pull from that for another book, another short story, stuff like that. So, um, what is your advice for people who suffer from imposter syndrome or writer's block?
So starting with imposter syndrome, and I've been through this. I think I had the idea to write a book months, if not half a year, before I ever did write my first book, because it was, well, who am I to write a book? And at the time, was broke valet parker. I'm like, there's the Tony Robbins and the Jack Canfields of the world, these big name authors and personal development gurus, if you will. And I'm just like, I'm some no name guy. Like, who's going to want to listen to me? Even if I did have something to share, or what am I going to say that hasn't been said before? what story could I say that hasn't been told before? Right. So there was a lot of that going on for me that I had to overcome. And there's a couple things I could say that could help with it. But if I give just one key concept, it would be consider the people who've had an impact on you. And I think about the people who've had an impact on me, the writers or the speakers or the authors. And I go, they're not necessarily the most famous people. That's not the key. I mean, I have grade school teachers who changed my life, so it's not about fame. And it's not necessarily that they said something that I'd never heard before or an idea. It was that they shared with me their unique perspective, meaning they have a background or a story that's unique to them that had an impact, or they said the words that I needed to hear right in that moment. So I'll give an example with the speaker. If you've ever heard a speaker, and I've had this happen where they say something and maybe I've heard it 50 times before, said a different way, but when they say it, all of a sudden it just clicks.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
get it, right? I needed them to say that. It doesn't matter how many people said it before. If they wouldn't have said it, I wouldn't have gotten it. And maybe it's the way they worded it. Maybe it's just the tone of voice. Maybe it was just the time in my life that I was in and it synced up. But I think, well, what if they would have had imposter syndrome? What if they would have said, oh, well, I'm not adding anything new. Who am I? I would have missed out on that. And when I realized that, I just flip it back and I go, wait a second, maybe someone needs me to share what I have to share.
And it's like maybe it may not be the way that they say it so much, it's just the way you process it after they've said it.
Yeah, exactly. And so an example I give for that is like take a doctor, right? So doctor saves people's lives potentially, right? So, but there's more than one doctor on this planet, and I can imagine myself being like, well, okay, if I were a doctor, if you imagine you're a doctor, that's a very significant, important job that you play, and yet there might be other people who could do it. But I think, well, what if you were on a plane? Right, you're on a plane, and imagine you're a doctor, and you hear a call on the intercom. Are there any doctors on board? So you hear the call, and so you go up and you go, "What's going on?" And well, it turns out someone is having maybe it's a heart attack or something that's happening, and you in that moment you have to save this person's life. And you're the only person on board this plane that can save this person's life, and you do. Now, in that moment, it doesn't matter how many doctors there are in this world. It doesn't matter that any other doctor would have been able to do the same job that you could have done. The fact is that person needed you in that moment, and you're the only one that was there. So when it comes to your books and your work and your gifts beyond even writing, you might be the right person at the right time for them. So like you're saying, it's how they process it. It's like when I hear these stories about someone who wanted to take their life, but a stranger smiled at them or asked them how they were doing. Just a real simple act of kindness. That's not, you don't have to be quote unquote special to do that. And yet the fact that you chose to do that was what made all the difference for that person right in that moment when they needed it, and they processed it in such a way where they go, that's exactly what I needed. So that's why I believe in sharing your gifts with the world, and being like, we kind of got to get out of our own way and be like, I don't know who this is for necessarily. I don't know who's going to receive it. Maybe I'm saying something similar in my book, or my story is similar to something else that's been out there. But if they haven't seen those other things, or if they're coming across my work at the time where they need it the most, then that's what really matters. And that's the inspirational side. The practical side of it is I also acknowledge that there is a place for developing your skill set. So for me, I do invest in learning to become a better writer and learning to be more impactful. And so there is a place to develop and hone your craft. And then one final point is that it's hard to judge ourselves. Am I an imposter? Am I not? Well, the question is, what do other people think who are your ideal readers? So if you go, I don't know if this story is like, is my story good? Is it not good? A person could inflate their ego and think it's way better than it really is, or they can tear themselves down and think it's not as good as it, and maybe it really is great. So this is why getting feedback from other people, and it's like, I don't know whether what I'm saying makes sense in my book or whether it's going to resonate with people. I need to share it with others and hear how they respond to it. And they will be ultimately the judge. There's a slight caveat with that. You're always going to have some people who don't like something. You'll also probably have you'll probably have people who are close to you. My mom will tell me everything I do is wonderful, so her feedback isn't objective either.
My daughter's a
So
grammar
you got to
point.
find the yeah. So you gotta, take some feedback with a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. Is I go, you know what? I can't judge my own work. I'm either going to be biased in favor of it or biased against it. But I'm going to be biased. So having some self-assessment is good. But then ultimately, it's about your readers and who you're serving, and they're going to be the ones who decide if what you have is valuable.
So, I'm just out of curiosity, do you still play guitar?
I do. I was playing, I just for fun, about 10 minutes ago, just jamming out on it. I don't play in a band at this point.
Oh, okay. And I guess that playing is I don't want to use the word cathartic, but it's therapeutic.
Playing, yeah, it's fun. It's I'd say writing music too. Playing and writing music is I can get so fired up about the creative process. And I found that can be true with music. It can also be true with writing books or creating programs and things like that. There's something about that creative process. And a slight side note, I do believe that having different skills and things that you work on and talents that you develop can all cross over. Meaning, I believe what I learned about writing music helped me with writing books. Right. So this idea, though, that you probably have other areas of life that you've excelled at, and you can take lessons and principles from that area and apply it to your writing. So tying that back into imposter syndrome, I could directly say, well, not everyone has my perspective coming from a music background. And if I talk about fitness or personal development, I could bring in music analogies or music metaphors. And now all of a sudden it becomes new and different and distinct because I'm bringing my background into it. So in your writing, if you're writing fiction, you have certain experiences and people that you've met that can inform the kind of characters and settings that you have. And in nonfiction, you have also your background and your experiences. So keep in mind, no one has lived the life that you live. No one has had these diversity of experiences that you've had or has seen things quite exactly the same way that you have. So you have this whole reservoir of background experience that you can bring into what you do, which gives you your own unique style and twist on whatever you're writing about.
Right. I totally agree with that. So, and I know your time is valuable and so is mine. So where can people find you online?
The best place to find me when it comes to writing and authorship is at bestsellersecrets.com. And that's where you can get my book, Why Authors Fail. It's free if you go there, and it covers the 17 mistakes self-published authors make that sabotage their success. So it goes deeper into the productivity and the mindset, as well as some very practical marketing things to sell your books. And you also get the daily newsletter where I give ongoing tips and things to help you as a writer. So again, that's bestsellersecrets.com.
Okay, and if you could leave listeners with aspiring authors with one word of advice, what would that be?
Mentor. Get a mentor. Get a coach. Get someone to help you. I don't think I would have ever made it if I didn't have some mentors and people to guide me and in my life.
All right. Well, we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired, write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched 1,000. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys, and have a blessed day.